She removed him from her close friends and never said a word, so he made a heartbreaking decision. She removed him from her close friends list without a single word. No text, no explanation, no heads up. Just gone. And he only found out because a mutual friend casually mentioned it like it was nothing. That one detail, that tiny digital door quietly closing, told him everything he was terrified to hear. He had been holding on to hope for weeks at that point. Telling himself the silence made sense. Telling himself tree planting was brutal and exhausting and the service was bad and she was probably just overwhelmed. He had built an entire case in his head defending her silence because he loved her and he wanted to believe the best. He was the kind of person who gave people the benefit of the doubt even when it cost him sleep, even when his gut was already whispering that something was wrong. He kept that internal prosecutor quiet because the alternative, that she was choosing not to reach out, was something he was not ready to sit with. And then that one piece of information dismantled the whole thing. Let me set the scene properly so you understand exactly what this guy was dealing with. He is 27 years old, doing long distance with his 23-year-old girlfriend while she works as a tree planter. If you have never heard of tree planting, it is genuinely one of the most physically punishing seasonal jobs that exists. You are out in remote terrain for weeks at a time, moving camps, planting thousands of trees a day, dealing with bad weather, injuries, exhaustion, and basically no creature comforts. The work is relentless in a way that is hard to communicate to people who have never done it. Your hands blister and harden. Your body aches in places you did not know could ache. The days blur together because every single one looks the same. He knew this going in. He had not just accepted the vague idea of it. He had actually educated himself on what the lifestyle demanded, what the camps were like, what communication typically looked like during a season. He had made a conscious decision, an informed and deliberate one, to be patient and understanding about the communication gaps that came with it. That is not nothing. That matters. The last real conversation they had was on May 6th. He said it was a good call. No fighting, no tension, no unresolved undercurrent humming beneath the surface. Just two people talking about their relationship and their future with something that felt like warmth and shared direction. He had even brought up the idea of getting a job as a checker in the tree planting industry so he could be closer to her next summer, which tells you a lot about where his head was. He was not just passively waiting for the season to end. He was actively trying to find ways to be part of her world, to shrink the distance rather than simply endure it. She told him those jobs usually went to people already in the industry and that even if he got one, there was no guarantee he would be placed at her camp. That stung a little. There was a smallness to it, a gentle closing of a door he had tried to open for her sake. But the call ended warmly. They said I love you. Everything felt okay. 2 days later she texted him to say a stick had gone into her foot. He checked in with the kind of instinctive concern you have for someone you love, the kind that makes you reach for your phone without thinking. She said it was fine. And then nothing. That was it. That was the last direct contact he received from her. A brief exchange about a minor injury, a quick reassurance, and then complete radio silence. No follow-up. No good morning texts. No voice messages. No memes or photos or any of the small digital breadcrumbs people leave when they are thinking of someone. Just silence, stretching out longer and longer with every passing day, each one heavier than the last. Now here is where it starts to get complicated in a way that you cannot just brush off as normal tree planting communication issues. She had mentioned before leaving that there would be a camp move around May 12th, and that the transition period might interrupt contact. Fine. He accepted that. He wrote it in his mental calendar and told himself to be patient through that window. But May 12th came and went and still nothing. And the thing is, his messages were delivering. They were not sitting in some queue waiting for a signal to catch up. They were landing. She had service at various points. She was physically in places with reception, places where a notification would have lit up her screen and shown her his name. She just was not using that reception to send him even a single line. Not a thumbs up. Not a heart reaction. Not a voice note recorded in 30 seconds between shifts. Nothing. And then came the Instagram revelation. A friend of his girlfriend reached out to offer context, probably trying to be kind, probably hoping to smooth something over before it broke irreparably, and ended up dropping the bomb that actually cracked everything open. She mentioned that the girlfriend had been posting on her close friend's Instagram story. Regular posts. Ongoing activity. A curated, intentional record of her life being shared with a selected group of people she trusted to see it. And when he checked, he realized he could no longer see those stories. He had been removed from the list at some point while she went dark on him. Quietly, without ceremony, without a single word said to his face. Let that sink in for a second. She had the time and the phone service to curate her close friends list and remove him from it. She had the energy to post content for that audience. She had access to her phone and was choosing, actively choosing, who saw her life. And in all of that decision-making, in all of that intentional curation, there was not one moment where she found 30 seconds to send her boyfriend a message saying she was alive and needed space. That is not a communication problem. That is a choice. The friend, wanting to help, offered to call the girlfriend under the guise of just catching up, without revealing that she had spoken to him or that he had any involvement. She made the call. There was something quietly painful about that whole arrangement, the way it required a workaround, a small deception just to get a crumb of information that should have come directly and honestly from the person he was in a relationship with. The fact that this was the only path available to him says everything. She came back with the answer. The girlfriend had told her she had not spoken to him in a bit and just needed some space until she was ready to reach out. She told a friend she needed space. She did not tell him. Now look, he acknowledged this himself in the post and I want to honor that acknowledgement because it matters. He said he would have respected it if she had just told him directly. He would have given her space without a second thought if she had simply communicated that need, even in a single sentence, even in a voice note she recorded while walking between rows of trees. The issue was not the need for space. People need space sometimes and that is human and real and he knew that. The issue was that she communicated that need to someone else and left him completely in the dark, anxious, and spiraling and unable to eat or sleep properly, not knowing if he was still in a relationship or not. She managed her own discomfort by outsourcing the information to a third party and leaving him to piece it together through back channels like a person trying to understand a conversation he was never invited into. He had been through long distance 3 times before, and every single time, when someone said they needed space without explanation, it was the beginning of the end. That pattern lives in him not as paranoia but as earned wisdom from prior heartbreak. He knew what this looked like. He had stood at this exact door before and watched it swing shut on him, and here he was again, watching the same slow-motion sequence unfold. The same withdrawal. The same hollow silence that preceded loss. Unable to stop it. Unable to even ask what was happening because she had removed the option of conversation entirely. He could not advocate for himself or for the relationship because she had made herself unreachable, and all he could do was wait. He was not sleeping. He was not eating properly. He was checking her location so compulsively that he had to manually turn it off because it was making everything worse, his eyes going back to the same pinpoint on the map over and over as if her coordinates might eventually tell him something her words refused to. He was in a genuine state of emotional limbo, suspended between a relationship that had not officially ended and a silence that felt exactly like an ending. And the person who put him there had not thought it necessary to give him even the most minimal acknowledgement that he existed. Oh, and there is a storage unit. Because of course there is. He had been renting a unit in her hometown, but it was getting too expensive, so he moved everything to a unit near him. When he opened the unit he discovered she had put some of her belongings in there without telling him. About $1,500 worth of ski gear and clothes just sitting there in the dark, zipped into bags, stacked quietly against the wall like a detail in a story she had not bothered to share with him. So now he is holding her possessions, paying for storage of her things, while she has gone silent and removed him from her Instagram story list. And he does not even have her father's address to return them, which means any resolution to this situation requires her to actually respond to him. She has made herself unreachable while simultaneously leaving a physical tether between them that he never asked to hold and cannot cut on his own. He set a mental deadline of May 24th. If he still had not heard from her directly by that date, he was going to send a final message ending the relationship and asking her to arrange pickup or shipping for her belongings. He asked for help wording that message in a way that was calm and clear and did not create more conflict. That impulse alone tells you something real about who he is. Even at the end of something that had ground him down over weeks of anxiety and sleepless nights and compulsive location checking, his instinct was still to choose his words carefully. To not blow anything up unnecessarily. To close the door with dignity rather than fury, which is more generosity than she had extended to him. Here is my honest take, and I want to be direct about it. He does not owe her any more waiting. He has already shown an extraordinary amount of patience and emotional maturity in a situation that most people would have exploded over weeks ago. He educated himself on her job. He tried to be understanding in a way that required real effort and real generosity. He did not bombard her with messages. He gave her the benefit of the doubt over and over and over again, each time quieting the part of himself that already knew what was happening. And what he got in return was being quietly removed from a social media list while she casually checked in with everyone else. The fact that she told a friend she needed space but never told him is the thing that reveals what is actually going on here. That is not an accident. That is not a byproduct of bad service or exhaustion or the physical demands of the job she is doing. That is a deliberate choice to manage her own comfort while leaving him to suffer without information. It is avoidance dressed up as nothing. Whether that comes from emotional immaturity, fear of confrontation, or something more deliberate does not actually change the outcome. The impact on him is the same regardless of her reasoning. He still went weeks without sleeping properly. He still had to find out through a friend. He still had to construct workarounds just to confirm the relationship he thought he was in was not already over in her mind. He should send that message. He should keep it short and dignified. He should say that he has respected her silence and given her the time she seemed to need, but that he cannot continue in a relationship where he does not know where he stands. He should state clearly that he considers the relationship over as of that message. He should ask her to arrange pickup or shipping of her belongings within a specific number of days, give her a real deadline with real consequences, and tell her that after that date he will make other arrangements. He does not need to be cold about it. He does not need to perform anger he may not even feel anymore. But he needs to be final. Because she has already made her decision. She just did not have the courtesy to say it out loud. He deserved better than this. He deserved at least a text. He told her she feels too masculine because she owns her home and texts back dry, she finally snapped. 9:39 p.m. Claude Respondio, she pays her own mortgage, drives a paid-off car, built her own career, and somehow that made her boyfriend feel like he was dating a man. She pays her own mortgage, drives a paid-off car, built her own career, and somehow that made her boyfriend feel like he was dating a man. Let that sentence live in the air for a moment. Because we need to talk about what is actually being said when a partner uses language like that. When someone tells the person they are with that they feel like they are dating a man, that is not feedback. That is not a communication style concern. That is a gendered insult dressed up as a relationship issue, and it is being delivered to a woman who by every measurable standard has her life completely together. It is the kind of thing that gets said quietly, almost casually, as if it is a reasonable observation rather than an attack. As if the person receiving it should nod, reflect, and ask themselves what they can do differently. And the most troubling part is that she did exactly that. She turned it over in her hands and tried to understand it instead of throwing it back where it belonged. Here is who she actually is. She is 32 years old. She owns her house. Her car is paid off. She has a career. She is the person that the people around her turn to when things go wrong. She is the older sibling, the responsible one, the one who holds things together when everyone else is falling apart. She has probably been that person since she was young enough that it stopped feeling like a role and started feeling like just who she was. And her boyfriend looked at all of that, at the whole architecture of a life she built with her own hands, and decided the problem was that she was too masculine. Too masculine. Because she gives directions in the car. Because her texts are not bubbly enough. Because when he brings her a problem she tries to help him solve it instead of just nodding along. Because she is not performing softness on command. Because her competence, the very thing that probably drew him to her in the first place, became threatening the moment it reminded him that he was not the most capable person in the room. I genuinely need a second. She described him as someone who comes from a military background, and she picked up on a dynamic where if he is not in the leading role, he interprets that as her being dominant or masculine. And she is being incredibly fair about it by framing it as something she is not sure about yet. Maybe he is insecure. Maybe he is intimidated. Maybe they just have different expectations. She is giving him every possible generous interpretation, the kind of generous interpretation that people extend to partners they love, the kind that can quietly become a habit of excusing things that should not be excused. She is bending over backward to be fair to someone who called her too much like a man because she offered to help him navigate. But let me be honest about what the pattern actually looks like from the outside. She offers directions in the car and that is too dominant. She texts back without adding emotional performance and that is too dry. She tries to solve a problem he brought to her and that is too masculine. She does not show affection the way he wants but he does not show affection the way she needs, yet only her behavior gets labeled as a problem. Every single point of friction in this relationship is being translated into a character flaw in her, and that character flaw always comes back to the same accusation. That she is not woman enough. That she is somehow failing at being what she is supposed to be simply by existing as the person she has always been. That is not a communication issue. That is a framework. She added context in an edit that actually deepened the concern for me rather than easing it. She clarified that he is proud of her accomplishments and does not criticize her independence in terms of her career or finances. And maybe she offered that detail because it felt important, because it made him seem more reasonable, more nuanced, more worth the confusion she was clearly feeling. But then she listed the actual complaints. Navigation. Problem solving. Texting style. Affection frequency. These are not compatibility issues. These are behavioral corrections. He is telling her how she should speak, how she should respond, how warm her texts should feel, how much softness she should perform and display in every small exchange. And every time she falls short of that standard the label comes out. Too masculine. Like a man. As if those words are not meant to sting, as if they are just descriptive rather than designed to make her feel like something is fundamentally wrong with her. And here is the thing that gets me about the edit. She noted that he is not affectionate in the ways she needs either. So the affection is not flowing in both directions. But is he being told he is too feminine? Is anyone calling him too cold, too distant, too emotionally withholding? No. Only her behavior generates a gendered criticism. His behavior is just how he is. Hers is a problem that needs a label. By the time she posted the update she had already arrived somewhere important without anyone needing to push her there. She wrote that she had been feeling something was off for a while, a quiet wrongness she had not quite been able to name. That she had not been feeling in love with him. That she had memories of moments where he had put her down, small moments that she had probably talked herself out of taking seriously each time they happened. That she had never talked to anyone about any of it, had held it all privately in a way that people do when they are not entirely sure their own feelings are valid. And then she used 3 words that hit harder than anything else in the whole post. This relationship is fucked up. Not complicated. Not difficult. Fucked up. That is someone who just heard herself out loud for the first time. She laid everything out in writing, read it back, saw the responses from strangers who reflected it back to her clearly, and arrived at a truth she had probably been circling for a long time, getting close and then stepping back, getting close again. She said she knows deep down she needs to be free. And I believe her, because that phrasing, deep down, tells you she has known it longer than she is letting on. Here is where I land on this completely. He is not confused about what kind of relationship he wants. He is not fumbling with communication or struggling to articulate a reasonable need. He wants a partner who performs a specific version of femininity that she does not perform and probably never will, because that version requires her to shrink herself in ways that would cost her something essential. It requires her to let him lead even when his directions are wrong. It requires her to add emotional warmth to texts on demand, to perform delight and softness even when she is tired or focused or simply being herself. It requires her to receive his problems without attempting to solve them, to sit with the frustration of watching someone struggle when her instinct is to help. It requires her to be softer, quieter, more deferential in every small daily exchange. And every time she fails to do those things, he reminds her that she is failing by reaching for a gendered insult and handing it to her like it is her fault for not fitting the shape he had already decided she should be. She is not too masculine. He is too controlling. And the most important part of this entire situation is that she already knows it. She did not need anyone to convince her. She just needed to say it out loud somewhere where someone would listen and reflect it back clearly without softening it or asking her to be more fair to him. The update told the whole story. She barely slept. She had a pounding headache. She was not in love with him anymore. She knew she needed to be free. That is not someone who needs more conversations with this man, more patience, more attempts to help him understand her. That is someone who needs to leave. She built a whole life by herself before he arrived, and she will build an even better one after he is gone. The paid-off car, the mortgage, the career, the steady hands that hold everyone else together. None of that becomes masculine just because a man felt threatened standing next to it. That is just who she is. And she deserves someone who sees all of it and feels lucky, not emasculated. Drop a comment telling me which story hit you harder today, and if you are not subscribed yet, hit that button because we do this all the time.